Hi there, I'm Blackbright, broadcasting out of the UK. Welcome to my channel. First time you're passing through, I'm born in the UK of Jamaican parents. I've spent a year in Angola and I've spent 11 years in America. And I've spent short spurts in different places. Anyway, I now live in the east of England and I share my opinions about news, about injustice, and sometimes I do self-help videos. And today I wanted to talk about paying attention to detail. It's kind of a self-help, but it's kind of mixed up with the news, if you see what I mean. Anyway, you'll get the gist of it once I start. But basically, I don't consider myself a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. And recently, well, over the last year or so, I've been attempting as a goal to read the Bible. So what I'll try and do is try to read a chapter a day. And if I miss a day, I'll read about 3 chapters in 3 days, whatever days I miss. Anyway, I've got up to Chronicles and reading Chronicles too. And it's so laborious to read. And I'm thinking to myself, why is there so much detail? I mean, every little thing, 120,000 horses, 140,000 chariots. And I'm just wondering, what is the relevance of telling the reader every single detail? Now, I took out, I just wanted to read out this to you because it says the interior was gold plated. He panelled the main hall with cypress and veneered it with fine gold, engraved with palm trees and chain designs. And then it says Solomon collected 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horses, 130,000 bushels of wheat, 120,000 gallons of wine, 120,000 gallons of olive oil. And I'm thinking to myself, why do we need to know that? What is the relevance? Then I thought to myself, I wonder if it is stressing the importance of detail. And then I think that is why I decided to do this video, because sometimes we don't pay attention to detail, even more so in an online culture and in a culture where we want things like yesterday. So when these little pop-ups come up, do you agree? Have you read? We just click on it because we're bloody lazy. The writing is too small. We can't be bothered with the small print. So we just click on it. And there you have committed to for anyone to violate your privacy or whatever it is you have committed people to do. Because you haven't thought, you haven't paid attention to detail. You haven't clicked on that where it says read privacy policy or read this or read our terms and references. You haven't done that. I'm guilty. I don't do it. I'm a Libran. I'm creative. I don't pay attention to detail. And it's much to my detriment a lot of the time, especially at work. Now I've had to learn to pay attention to detail. And believe me, it is difficult. Really difficult. But if I want to keep my job, I've got to pay attention to detail. And sometimes I go through the same thing. Why is it important for us to put this in there? Why is it important for us to state this? But it's all about accuracy. And it's about not being vague. And you know, a prime example of vagueness is the Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty. That was very vague, and they only realised it was vague when they decided to leave the EU. And that's why things are so complex. And so you'll find a lot of legislation is deliberately vague so that they can kind of maneuver it and put in it whatever they want. And that's why paying attention to detail is important. That's why we have lawyers, because lawyers pay attention to detail. So what we miss, they pick up. Similarly with the legislation about the schools and the kids being detained. And it came out one way, and it took somebody who had the experience and the knowledge and paid attention to detail to explain the facts. But it also helped helped us inform the government so that they can close that loophole, close that gap, because when legislation is deliberately vague, there's nothing you can do about it when things go wrong if you haven't nipped it in the bud. Now, they've had to correct that legislation to make sure they've inserted in there that you cannot detain a child under COVID-19 without the permission or the consent of the parents. And, and it added something like, unless we can't get in touch with you. And, we've made attempts to get in touch with you. And that is their get out clause. They might make one call and they can't get in touch with you. And because they can't get in touch with you, they have the right to, if they suspect your child has COVID-19, they can take that child goodness knows where and detain him or her for 14 days. So it's important for you to pay attention to detail. A lot of people like me, I give an overview in my videos. I always say I'm not an academic. When I say I'm not an academic, it doesn't mean that I think I'm stupid. When I say I'm not an intellectual, it doesn't mean I don't think I'm intelligent. What I mean is that I haven't done the research to the degree required. And because of that, there's room for error. And so that is why I always ask you to research, to double check what I say, to get all the details so that they're accurate. Because I really just give an overview to draw your attention to what is happening. And then I leave you to do your homework. So it's not good. And I believe that in writing all that detail in the Bible, it's kind of reminding us its importance, why it's important to pay attention to detail. Not to be a perfectionist, because you do have people who are perfectionists. They go over the top and they sit there picking out people's errors. That's all they do. If they see that you're 2 minutes late, they draw attention to it. Oh, you're 2 minutes late. Is there any reason for that? Are you going to make up those 2 minutes? If they see you go in the toilet maybe 3 or 4 times, oh, you've been to the toilet. Is there anything wrong? Do you have a stomach bug? These people, I noticed that you've had your annual leave signed off. But I remember you were 14 minutes late the other day. Are you going to take that off of your time? People like that. That is paying attention to detail, but that is a non-productive way of paying attention to detail. That's where people who are insecure and they need to overcompensate for their insecurity. So it's one way that they feel as though they're taking charge. They feel as though they're doing a bloody good job. Perfectionists really think they're wonderful, but it's actually a form of control, and it's actually insecurity. So, what is the message? Detail is important. Paying attention to detail is the difference between excellence and mediocrity. And we know that from Noah's Ark. And also, when you pay attention to details, because can you imagine if technicians, engineers, mathematicians, scientists didn't pay attention to detail? We'd be a mess. And you can imagine that sometimes when you buy a product and you have to take it back to the shop because there's a defect, it's probably because someone did not pay attention to detail. So there are times when most times it's really important to pay attention to detail. I mean, being overly pedantic is something else, and it's a difference between what is important and what is necessary. What is important about what you're doing, about the document, about your work, about the process, as opposed to what is necessary. You can have some unnecessary and imprecise details in there, but that's not going to make an iota of difference to the quality of the report. And that's what you call a document that's good enough, when it has all the important aspects into it, but all the unnecessary details are taken out. They're just superfluous to requirements. So some people, they get in trouble for defying instructions by not paying attention. like I said, with a small print, if you haven't read the small print and then you're committed to something, they have this. I don't know what you buy. I can't remember now, but you can buy this product and you click on something like, okay, you think you're clicking on something that tells you you're paying for the product online, but what you're actually clicking on is a recurring line of credit. So they don't need to ask you every time for your credit card details. They can actually um, take that payment the same time every 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is. And I remember I did that for a cream, and the cream was like £49. And the first one was free, but I didn't realize that by clicking, I was actually committing to pay a recurring payment of £49 every 3 months. And I had hell trying to stop that recurring, because once you sign that, once you've clicked on it, you are agreeing. But because I think the company's address was different, there was some kind of ambiguities about the company. And it turned out that that company wasn't, I'm not going to say it was a scam, but it wasn't a proper company. It hadn't been established for a long time, and there was some dodgy bits about it. I managed to get my money back. So now, every now and then, I check my PayPal account and make sure I haven't inadvertently clicked on something that says recurring payments, because sometimes I find it. And it's not a nice surprise if you haven't planned to do that. So that's about paying attention to detail. Making sure you read the small print. It is laborious, but you have to be prepared in worst case scenario, that you're giving away your rights. I personally think, oh, what the hell, they're taking my rights away anyway. I can't be bothered to read all those terms and references. And, whoever these advertisers, whoever they are, the companies, they bank on our laziness. They bank on the fact that we cannot be bothered to read the small print. When they're designing these products, and just as you're about to pay, they say, do you agree? It's like when they say, do you agree to these cookies? You just click because you just think, I just want to get to where I'm going. But we're doing ourselves a disadvantage by not paying attention to detail and skipping processes, and just because we just want to get what we want. And we're in this mode of get things quick. We just want to get things quick, over and done with. The quicker the better. So click, click, click. Okay, agree. You don't even know what you're agreeing to. You don't even know what you're agreeing to. And I do it. And after I've done it, I'm saying, oh, I chastise myself. Why do you do that? And I look back and I think it's because I want to read the article. I just want to read about this, or I just want to get that. And it's not good, So, yeah, like I said, I'm accused of not paying attention. I'm creative, Libra. And do you notice the politicians are deliberately vague? Like I said, when they do their policies, they do it in such a way that you're baffled. It's deliberate, it's their strategy. So, in order to kind of counteract it, it gets very complex. And you don't know what's happening from what's not happening. You need somebody on the ball all the time to challenge them with whatever it is they're saying or trying to set up or trying to get us pulled into. And a lot of time people haven't got time, but I'm glad there are people who are on top of that Coronavirus Act and who are letting us know when the new legislation comes out, which I said is like every 21 days or thereabouts. And I think it's actually 25 days, but whenever it is, there's somebody on top of it and letting us know. Otherwise, we wouldn't know. And do I have time to go and I could diarise it, could put it in my calendar, but do I have time to keep checking the Coronavirus Act? No, I don't. But I think it's important that it's checked and people are kept informed about what's happening and how vague it is and what we're being pulled into. Because if that commissioner that woman from safeguarding hadn't gone in and asked them to clarify, are you really saying you can take children outside school under coronavirus without the parents' consent if they've made a couple of calls? And then they had to be explicit. But unless you are paying attention to those details, and unless the legislation is precise, a lot of us will be screwed. A lot of children could have been suffered. Now it's out in the open. They can't just go into schools, which is what they might have been wanting to do, and take your kids out. And I reckon they'd be targeting teenagers. I don't think they're going to be targeting little kids, but if you're under 18, they could easily say, oh, we can take this child or we can take that child, that teenager or that teenager. So you have to be so careful. And I feel sorry for young people today because they're living in perpetual fear. And yes, it's fine to say, don't be afraid, go out there, whatever. But it's not a fair world. You're not dealing with a even playing field. If you were dealing with an even playing field, it wouldn't be bad, but you're not. And so we have young people out there, whether they're innocent or not, they all get pulled up or pulled in for some reason or another, just to fulfill an agenda, just because these police officers have got targets to meet. It's not right. And there's no oversight with the police. There might be a little oversight in Bedfordshire, but no oversight with the Met. Proper, committed oversight. They have their rules and they have their little regulations, but it usually applies when they get caught. So these policemen, they don't feel accountable. They don't feel as though they have to worry about their processes because, all they've got to do is say, oh, well, it was under this act, that act. And these acts are so vague. And you notice how quickly the police run off the acts over their tongue. And you're not so, it sounds very impressive. And because, oh, they're a police officer and they're saying this act and they're quoting this act, it must be right. But half the time they say it so fast, half the time they get the acts mixed up. And if you don't know what they're talking about, you're going to believe they have a right to cart you off and do whatever. So all they've got to do is now go into a school. If this hadn't been clarified, take a couple of kids and say we have reason to believe under the track and trace that these two young men or these two teenagers have been in contact with somebody who's got COVID-19, coronavirus. And so therefore we need to take them away and detain them for 14 days. They could have done that. And, citing under the Coronavirus Act. They could have done that. So it's only now parents, after that investigation, parents now know that they have to make sure all their documents are accurate, make sure they have their phone on, even if they're at work and their phone is on silent or whatever. Or if it's a call, make sure that you put it on Do Not Disturb and only allow the school to get through. You can do that. No, you don't have to accept all the calls that are coming through when you're at work, but if you put on Do Not Disturb and allow that just your school to get through, and your what do you call it, your carers or your guardians or whoever is important, they're the only people to get through, then you can't miss that call. If you miss that call, they can take your kid off. And the government becomes their statutory parent. You don't want that. So when you're talking about paying attention to detail, a lot of us blow it off and they bank on us being lazy. We have been groomed to want to do things quickly, to get things done, to get in and out. We used to get up and turn off the TV. Now you use the remote. The remote isn't even quick enough. Now you want something quicker. Now you've got this, Alexa and whatever else there is, doing it for you, becoming lazier and lazier and lazier, falling right into the trap of complacency and ease and quickness. That's all you want. Whatever's efficient, you don't want to use your brain anymore. And that's a sad thing because, yes, it is very good to have Google and to be able for that to be able to give you answers, and you have YouTube that tells you stuff. But what is happening to your brain when you're not using it? Is it falling asleep? Is it becoming inactive? Your brain needs to be stimulated. It can only be stimulated through reading, and what else? I think crosswords are supposed to stimulate the brain. Games are supposed to stimulate the brain. But it needs stimulation. You cannot just sit back and just allow life to pass you by. And so that when you're called in front of whoever, and they say, well, we had your permission, we had your consent. You said, I didn't give my consent. I didn't give my consent. They say, well, if you look at this date, you clicked OK on your phone. Is this your phone number? Yeah. Well, you clicked on this key to say, I agree on such and such a date at such and such a time. And you consented to us accessing whatever it is. And you could say, well, I'm of an order. You could say anything. It doesn't matter. You've given your consent. And that's a sad thing about no longer requiring signatures. Very, very clever. No longer requiring signatures. How easy is it for us to click on an OK button? And that is, in fact, your signature. Every time you click OK, I agree, that is your electronic signature. And it's recorded. So, I'm just saying, peeps. So like I said, vagueness leaves room for error, misunderstanding and confusion. It's like when you go to the doctors and your doctor will say to you, you now have to become your own GP. You go to the doctors will say, oh, what's wrong with you? If you don't explain precisely what is wrong with you, they are going to treat you for the symptoms that you tell them. They're not going to ask any more questions. They're not going to examine. So if you don't pay attention to detail before you go to your GP, pay attention to detail of all your symptoms and write them down so that when you go to your GP, you can be as precise as possible so that they know that they're treating something or they can pick up something from what you've said. So paying attention to detail, peeps, it is important. It's hard, but that's where discipline comes in. That's where focus comes in. It's not easy to pay attention to detail, believe me. And I run a magazine, and sometimes my magazine doesn't even come out because I'm so busy going back and going over it. And because I do it by myself, I have to do the proofreading by myself. When I'm doing the proofreading, I think, oh, it'd be better if I worded it this way. It'd be better if I didn't have that. It'd be better if I took that comma out. It'd be better if I capitalised that. And then by the time I go back and forth trying to perfect it, it just doesn't get done. Sometimes I have to say, Myrna, it's good enough. Get it out. And blow it if there's a little spelling mistakes. I've seen spelling mistakes in the Express or in the Sun and all these big papers. So I'm not going to beat myself up just because there's a typo. Guarantee somebody will write to me, oh, I noticed a typo. And I say to, oh, really? Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Would you do me a favour? Would you help me proofread my magazine for me? Oh, no. So, it's the price you pay. You can't get perfection all the time. Perfection is impossible. So I don't beat myself up anymore. I don't try to put out a perfect document. I try to put out a document that is relevant and has information I think you'll find useful. That's what I now do. On the details, if you want to know where that magazine is of course in the description. So, we shouldn't be cutting corners. Scanning info. I mean, I love scanning info. I'm always scanning. I can't read every word. If I read every word, number one, I wouldn't even get these videos done. So I rely on you to check for me, like I said before. Anything I say, just double check. Okay? Just do that for me. What else? Is that it? yeah, I think that's it. So I hope you found it useful. So my word of advice to you is, take your time. Some of us have got more time on our hands now. Try to use it wisely. Pay attention to detail. Check the small print. Know what you're doing. And yeah, that's all for now. Bye bye.